The Sharks have arguably the best prospect pool in the NHL. How do their top 10 stack up?
You're Locked On Sharks, your daily podcast on the San Jose Sharks, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, welcome to Locked On Sharks, the premier hockey podcast covering your favorite team in the Bay Area. My name is JD Young, caretaker at the Reef, also the co-host of Locked On NHL. I want to thank you for making Locked On Sharks your first listen. Proudly part of the Locked On Network. We cover your team every day. If you want to be an everydayer, all you have to do is just follow along wherever you get podcasts, or you can watch on YouTube as well. And today we're going to be ranking the Sharks prospect pool, the best prospect pool in the NHL. Some would say, myself included, who mix it up and who are the best of the best. So we're going to be looking at honorable mentions and then kind of stacking up the top 10 and having to decide between Askarov and Sam Dickinson. Spoiler. So before we get to all that, do want to let you guys know that today's episode is brought to you by Monarch Money. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONNHL at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. All right, so we are ranking the prospects. We've spent the last couple of weeks kind of looking at all the Sharks prospects, seeing how their seasons went. So we're going to now be ranking said prospects. So rules that I personally set for my prospects, right? Because you have to have rules or else it's not fair. So one rule I put in is kind of the big rule. 50 NHL games or less. Because by then you've most likely established yourself as an NHL player, or we kind of know what you are by then if you haven't played 50 NHL games. So Will Smith, Macklin Celebrini, both surpassed the 50 games threshold. Neither one on this list. Same thing with William Eklund, who's now played 2 full seasons in the NHL. Like, that's kind of where I put the cutoff, because like if you've played 50 games, you're probably on your way, or you've established yourself as a full-time NHL player. Upside is like, if it comes down to a toss-up between the two, I look at the upside and I try to go with the upside swing between two players. So, which definitely comes into play with some of these decisions here. So I think who has the higher ceiling, even if that ceiling might not be as unattainable as the other person, but who do I think could be the better player if everything goes right? So we'll start out by looking at the players who just missed the cut. So these are the 11 through 15, kind of the guys who just missed the cut for me, at least in the top 10. And again, like, this is no knock on them. The Sharks have one of the deepest prospect pools, if not the deepest, or one of the best prospect pools in the NHL. And I think it's a testament to Mike Grier and the work he's done in the past couple of seasons in turning this franchise around. And, there's a reason why we keep saying the future is teal. So let's start with the guys who just missed the cut. So number 15, Daniel Gushin, the 2020 draft, only player from the 2020 draft who's still even on the list. And he is the guy who's just, barely made the cut on the just missed the cut list. So I still think Gushin has the potential to be a good scorer, like middle six scorer. Just needs an opportunity, and actually, when he gets his opportunity, he needs to do something with it. So, of the 2020 original Sharks draftees. So, Jack Thompson, number 14. Again, a player who I think is probably going to be one of those AHL, NHL kind of tweener players, but again, like, you could do a lot worse than Jack Thompson. Leo Salin-Walinius, number 13, a player who I think just spending the whole year in one place next year will be a huge, huge boon for him, and I'm still very excited about him. Number 12, Ethan Cardwell. Cardwell, who probably is going to settle into a middle six kind of high energy guy there. Had a little bit of dip in production this year with the Barracuda, but if you can get the production you saw as a rookie and then the way he kind of rounded out his game this season with the Barracuda, there's still like a really nice path for him to be a very solid NHL player. And then Eric Polkamp is number 11. Polkamp, of course, is going back to university, or at least it feels like he's going back to University of Denver, where he's probably going to be the guy for what's probably still going to be a pretty good Denver team. And I wouldn't be surprised if he racks up some monster numbers and makes a push to be a professional hockey player by this time next year. So those are my just missed the cut type of players. So, and I think some of those guys have been around there or maybe made the cut before. But again, just a testament to what the Sharks have done. And it's a hard list to crack the top 10. You think of some of these guys like Leo Saleh-Wallenius would probably be like in a lot of organizations, he might be flirting with like a top 5 type of pick. Compared to where he was my number 13th prospect for the Sharks. So coming at number 10, though, a guy who's kind of always been in this spot and continues to hang into this spot, and that's Filip Bystedt, the 2022 first round pick. I'm not going to go through all the numbers and stuff that I've done before since we just did them recently, but more of a justification for Bystedt. Bystedt did have a little bit of an up and down season, dealt with a little bit of injuries here in the middle of the season, but the playoff performance from him, I thought, was some of the best hockey we've seen out of Filip Bystedt. And that is what you're hanging your hat on, right? When the games get bigger and the stakes matter more, he's a guy who can continue to play well and kind of grow his game and be a driving force. And that's what you're looking for, especially as a potential third line center for the Sharks in the future. I still think Bystedt, it's hard, especially now where the Sharks are at with, with both Smith, Celebrini, and the potential addition of Misa. It's hard for me to see him kind of cracking that top 6, especially as a center. But we know that third line, especially in the playoffs, is crucial. And that's usually if that third line, if you have the advantage on the third line, it usually tends to go your way. And I think Bystedt could be an anchor on that third line for the Sharks, as they have, their skill guys, but then having Bystedt who can potentially go out and match up as well and provide stuff defensively, and then be an ace penalty killer. I think Bysted's well on his way to kind of serving that role for San Jose. Number 9, a guy who I think was actually off my list last year, but cracked it this year. Cam Lund. So Lund this year, of course, played with Northeastern and then signed his ELC and got a handful of games with the San Jose Sharks at the end of the season. I do think Cam Lund is a player that's going to be on the Colin Graf path to success of at least starting next year with the Barracuda and kind of continuing to round out his game, and then potentially playing, kind of the second half of the season with the Sharks, and then maybe going back with the Barracuda, for a playoff type of performance. I think that's kind of the path for Cam Lund this year, but potentially more offensive upside than Colin Graf. But there's still I think there's still there's more offensive upside from Colin Graf, and Graf, who's spoiler ranked higher in this list. But I think there's still also more questions about with Cam Lund and where he kind of fits with the Sharks, especially with some of the other guys that we're looking here. So I was pleasantly surprised with what we saw from Lund at the end of the season. But I still think there needs to be a little bit more kind of incubation for him with the Barracuda. But I do think, again, he's going to probably solidify himself as a middle 6, a solid middle 6 type of player for the Sharks. And right, that's what you need. You need some scoring options. I think Cam Lund can be a big time scoring option for the Sharks as he continues his development. So we're going to look at some of these other guys here, including where Kasper Halton fits. Where does Colin Graf fit? Shakir Mukhamadullin, Canyoni. We got all those guys coming up here in just 1 second. Ever checked your bank account? Wonder, where did all my money go between dining out, online shopping, buying food for your children because it's summertime and they don't stop eating? It's easy to lose track of where your money goes. That's where Monarch Money comes in, your personal CFO, giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money isn't just a budgeting app. It's a complete financial command center. You can track all your accounts, investments, and spending in one place so you can stop just managing your wealth and start building wealth. Instead of juggling multiple apps, you can use Monarch to check your finances, track spending, and even plan long-term goals, and easy collaboration with your partner. You can track shared and personal accounts, set goals, and stay on the same page without the stress. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONNHL at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONNHL for half off your first year. All right, before we continue, do of course want to thank you guys for making a Locked On Sharks your first listen. Again, proudly part of the Locked On Network. We cover your team every day. And if you want to be an everydayer, just make sure you're following along. We got plenty of great stuff. We're still a couple weeks out from the draft, which means we have more draft profiles coming next week. We're also going to have a simulated off season where me puts on my Mike Greer hat and tries to put together a roster for the San Jose Sharks. So we'll be doing that over the course of 3 or 4 days right before the draft, the week before the draft. And of course, we'll be live in LA for the draft. So make sure you're following along wherever you get podcasts. And of course, you can watch on YouTube as well. All right, we mentioned him, Kasper Holttunen. He is my number 8 prospect for the San Jose Sharks this year, playing, of course, with the London Knights. He was named the OHL MVP of the playoffs. The dude goes absolutely bonkers every time the playoffs roll around. And while I think a guy like Lund is probably going to be a more well-rounded player, I think the upside of Holttunen's scoring puts him ahead. And I think he's going to be very much a specialized player, a go forecheck, go score goals type of player. And I think that's where his role is going to be for the Sharks. And he'll be playing with the Barracuda this season. But that shot of his is special. It's a cannon. If you have not watched Kasper Holttunen crush one-timers before, whether in video or in person, highly recommend it because it's a thing of beauty to watch him do it. And he loves to shoot the puck. And again, right, the big question with Holttunen, well, he can't drive play. Do you need to drive play if you're playing with Misa or Eklund or Celebrini or Smith? No, go get open by the face-off dot, and we'll make sure the puck gets to you and go crush one-timers. Like, that's going to be his role. It's going to be a very, very specialized role, but I don't mind because what he does is very, very special. So that's why I have him at rank. If I thought he was maybe a little bit more about a rounded player, I think you could definitely make the case because of, again, how special his shot is. But I think he's just going to be a really specialized player, and that's okay to have specialized players. Last time I checked, you still need guys who can score, even if it's on the power play. And if he just becomes like a poor man's Patrick Laine, again, Patrick Laine is an amazing player, but Laine is very much a special player, especially on the power play. If he becomes, again, a poor man's version of Patrick Laine, I think as Sharks fans, you'll be pretty happy with that. So next guy who's been very high on my personal list, guy I believed in from the beginning, Luca Cagnoni. This season playing with a Barracuda, put up record-breaking numbers for a defenseman, especially as a 20-year-old defenseman in the AHL. Cagnoni is very much the make-or-break type of player, right? Where, especially with his size of, being 5'9", I've said it before and I will continue to say it, right? Small defensemen like him they're either really awesome in the NHL or they just don't stick around. There's not much of an in-between. And I just tend to believe, I think he's going to be really awesome. And his upside, especially compared to Holttunen, well, Holttunen, again, goal scorer, very special player. I just think Cagnoni has a better chance to be more impactful all over the ice especially in the defensive zone, where I think Canyoni's an underrated defenseman, especially for his size, and then the way he can drive play offensively. And we saw what happened when he was missing from games with the Barracuda, or even just left the ice for a little bit, where the offense just dries up. He was a massive part to the Barracuda's success this season, and I think he will continue that trend. So I am extremely, extremely, extremely high on Luca Cagnoni. I think he is like getting him in the, like, I had him as a second round pick. I would have been happy if the Sharks picked him in the second round. Getting him in the fourth round at 123 just makes me love him even more. And like, he's a guy I just do not bet against Luca Cagnoni, and you will not hear Luca Cagnoni slander on the Locked On Sharks podcast as long as I live and breathe as the host. So yes, Luca Cagnoni, he's up there. So next guy who splits his time between the Sharks and the Barracuda this season, and that is Colin Graf, the undrafted player who was the number one NCAA free agent last the 23-24 season. Sharks were able to sign him. Had a very successful season. Again, splitting time between the Barracuda and between the San Jose Sharks, right? And you saw in the Barracuda where he was able to kind of continue to round out his game and just get used to playing professional hockey, and then translate those skills to be a very solid second half of the season for San Jose. And again, I know I go upside. I just feel like Colin Graf is a super safe player. Like, the floor is so high with him, plus the upside. Like, that's why I have him ranked where I have him ranked here, because as the sixth player in this thing. So, like, probably gonna be a middle six player, but I think he's just so good at whatever you need him to do, where he can kind of be that line connector, right? If you need him to go forecheck, if you need him to help kind of score, if you need him to play defense, I think he's going to be another ace penalty killer for the Sharks. I just think he's really good at kind of a little bit of everything. And I think we're still discovering how good his shot is, which was something you especially saw in college. He's very good at off the one-timer, and we haven't really got a chance to see that professionally yet. So I'm hoping he spends his offseason kind of continuing to work on that and be able to unleash it a little bit more here. But I do really like Colin Graf, and I think he is a really good player who the Sharks are gonna feel really nice about where he's gonna end up for them in their lineup, and especially as a middle, like if he's a souped up third line player with Beasted, if you had like a Graf in the long run, like a Graf, Beasted, Haltonen line, where Haltonen's kind of your forecheck score, Beasted's kind of more your playmaker, and then Graf is your kind of do it all type of player on there who can kind of help drive the line, help facilitate. And that line can also play defense. Like, that's a pretty nice homegrown line right there for you eventually. So yeah, I'm pretty high on Graf. So we'll finish up here before we get to the final four players here with Shakir Mukhamadullin. Mukhamadullin, who played 30 games with the Sharks. Again, another one. He split his season with the Sharks and with the Barracuda. So just like Graf, I don't expect either one of those guys to be on the list next year. But Mukhamadullin, I think, solidified himself as an NHL player and was playing some of his best hockey before he ended his season got ended with an injury. The thing with him is always going to be the injuries, but I do think you're looking at a potential second pairing defenseman for the San Jose Sharks, and a guy who's going to be able to eat a lot of minutes, play solid defensively. I think he's still kind of scratching the surface of what he can be offensively. He did drive, had some production last year for San Jose. And again, I don't want to say it felt fluky, but it didn't feel like he was driving play. So if he starts to drive play while also being able to get production and playing well in his own zone, that's where I think you feel like with Mukhamadulin's where he's going to kind of end up. So again, I still probably feel like he's top set as maybe like your 3 or 4, but his floor is really high because he's an NHL. I feel like he's a good NHL player. or he's on his way to being a good NHL player. But like, he's still going to be, I think he's still trying to figure things out a little bit here. So I still think there's some room to grow with him. So we're going to be looking at the last 4 guys here. So we know it's going to be Musty, Chernyshov, Dickinson, and Askarov in some sort of order here. So we're going to dig into those guys and who I think the best prospect in the Sharks prospect pool is. So we'll get to that in just 1 second. All right, before we finish up, do of course want to thank you guys for making Locked On Sharks your first listen. For your second listen, check out the all-new Locked On NHL Game Night. Every game, every night until a Stanley Cup champion is crowned. Get local analysis on a national scale. Find NHL Game Night on Locked On NHL on YouTube, wherever you listen to podcasts. All right, let's finish up here with the top 4. So coming in at number 4, and this question between Musty and Chernyshov was one I struggled with for a little bit, right? Because if you're going with upside, it's pretty similar. Maybe Musty's like a touch higher, but Chernyshov's no slouch either, right? And then if you look at the floor, I think that's where it kind of makes a little bit of a difference between the two players. And that's why I think that's why I made the choice I made. So number 4 is Quentin Musty. So this season played with Sudbury again, maybe not the season that he would have signed up for, right? He played 33 games, had 30 goals, but, missed a month of it because of a holdout and then promptly broke his hand and missed, 6 weeks after that. They got bounced in the first round of the playoffs, then got to play in the AHL at the end of the season where you saw flashes of what makes Musty really good, and you saw flashes of what makes Quentin Musty feel like he needs to spend, some time playing in the AHL, and that's okay. Like, that is okay, right? William Eklund spent an entire year in the AHL, and guess what? He's a much better player for it. Even though people like myself are like, get him in the NHL. Eklund's a better player now because he spent the entire season in the AHL working on his craft. That's why Mike Greer is Mike Greer, and I'm an idiot with a microphone. But Musty, though, I think, I talked about before, but I do think he should be on the William Eklund plan of success. So just spend the whole season in the AHL and work on playing against grown men. And I think he's got the skills. I think he's got the tenacity. I think he's got everything to make him succeed. But again, there's no reason to rush Quentin Musty to the NHL. And there's people like, just play him in the NHL next year. Like, that is not a smart decision, to be honest. I think if you just put him in the NHL, unless he has an absolutely amazing preseason training camp, then we can maybe have the conversation. But again, let Musty simmer. Let him get used to playing against grown men, because he's one of those bigger, faster, stronger players. Right? He's always been bigger, faster, stronger than everyone he's played against his whole life. Now you're playing against guys who are just as big, just as strong, and just as fast as you. And I think he needs to kind of work on that kind of change up pitch, right? Of, okay, how do I counter this? So, but no, I'm still super high. I think Musty, I think Musty's a top 6 forward for the Sharks going forward. And I understand if you're going to trade any other prospects, Musty's kind of the guy you circle. But I'm not quick to just throw Musty out there, because I think Quentin Musty is going to be a very, very good NHL player, and I think he's got that dog in him that we haven't been able to kind of see him get there yet. And I think this season with the Barracuda, I think we're going to be feeling a lot better about Quentin Musty here in 6 or 7 months, about kind of where he's headed. So, of course, that leaves at number 3. Igor Chernyshov. Chernyshov, who, missed the first half of the season with a shoulder surgery, also got a sunburn at some point. Absolute ridiculous season in the OHL with his 23 games and 56 points. Played well in the playoffs as well. Chernyshov, again, maybe the ceiling isn't quite as high as Quentin Musty, but the floor is super high and super safe, right, with Chernyshov, where a guy who's, especially a guy who's played against grown men in the KHL, played in a bottom six role there, and was one, effective, and two, productive. Chernyshov, I think, is one of those guys who, again, is just going to slide it. Whatever you need him to do, that dude is going to do it. He is very precise. His details are very good at such a young age, and they're going to continue to get better. Like, I wouldn't be surprised if Chernyshov is playing NHL games before Quentin Musty. And that's no knock no knock against Quentin Musty. It's just because Chernyshov's details are already kind of at a bit higher than where Quentin Musty is. So, but not again. It feels like Chernyshov is going to be an NHL player for the Sharks. While Quentin Musty, there's still some questions, right? If Musty isn't able to continue to score, then you kind of ask, well, what can you do for me? With Chernyshov, right, if he can't score, like, you feel like he can be an effective, third line forward who can go out and, check and play some defense and maybe pot a couple here and there. So that's why, again, I know I go upside as everything, but when you're this close here, right, and the Musty upside is like a hair ticker, like just a little bit higher. I think Chernyshov's ability that we've seen him be able to do, play different roles and be effective in a lot of different roles, I think that gives him a slight edge here. So, so we get down to the last two. And this is a something I've struggled with. I reached out to friends and colleagues to ask if I was dumb for doing this, because I have Askarov at number 2. And I have Sam Dickinson as the Sharks' best prospect right now. So let's start with the Askarov, right? And Askarov, who again kind of split his team time, mostly spent time in the AHL this year, and was very good, very effective, and even in his time in the NHL, arguably was the Sharks' best goaltender, especially after Blackwood was traded, right? Like, Askarov looks like to be the dude, which is what you want, right? He is like, I feel very confident Askarov's trajectory is to be a top 10 goalie in the NHL. And I think that if he's a top 10 goalie in the NHL and this team continues to build the way they're building, I think he is good enough for these Sharks to potentially win a Stanley Cup, right? If Mike Grier continues to build the thing the way, the way he's building this, right? That's pretty high. That's like being a top 10 goalie is still pretty high. And I think, again, we've seen enough from Askarov, and yes, he has some things he needs to work on, right? And he's not, but I feel like he's going to be at the very minimum, he's going to be an above average goalie, right? Which would probably feel a little disappointing, but I think he's a goalie who probably settles in between 5 to 10. Like, if you rank all the goalies, right, he's probably one of those goalies where on a good year, maybe like if that career year thing, maybe he's sneaking into the top 5. But still, Sam Dickinson, though, that boy's good. And here's the argument I had with myself, at least. The player I keep coming back to, for better and for worse, right, is Brent Burns. And Brent Burns, 90% of the time, Brent Burns is going to do awesome stuff. And 10% of the time, you're going to be like, bro, what are you doing, right? And I think you're going to have the same experience with Sam Dickinson, right? Of the 90% of the time, he's going to do awesome stuff. And then 10% of the time, you're like, bro, what are you doing with Sam Dickinson? Okay? But if I keep going with the Brent Burns comparison, right? Brent Burns was literally the best of, literally won a Norris. And can Dickinson potentially win a Norris? Maybe. Like, I've watched a lot of Sam Dickinson, and it does remind me a lot of Brent Burns, just the way he plays, his ability to cover ground. It's just a left-handed Brent Burns. And if Brent Burns, of all people, the guy who played forward and played wing, like who was a forward for 20 minutes, played defense, et cetera, if that dude can win the Norris, Why can't Sam Dickinson eventually win the Norris? So that, again, if I'm going upside is king, right? The upside is the end all be all here. And yes, most likely Dickinson probably doesn't win a Norris, and he probably ends up as your like a really awesome third defenseman or your second defenseman, right? On a very, 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 very good team. But still, the kid was absolutely outstanding. You could argue he was the best player in the Memorial Cup. I know Easton Cowan won the MVP. He was playing 35 minutes a night against the top players in the CHL and was controlling games. And yes, there's questions about his IQ and, what happens if, kind of dealing with pressure. And of course, those are questions that we will not be able to answer right now. We won't be able to answer until he starts to play NHL games. But man, the kid's really good. And I'm really high on Sam Dickinson, probably too high on Sam Dickinson, but I think he's going to be really good. And right now, I think he's the best player in the Sharks prospect pool. So, and we'll see what happens here in a couple of weeks when the Sharks add some new players into it and where those guys fit in. But yeah, Sharks are in good hands, man. Sharks are in great hands right now. So that's gonna be it for me today. We'll be back next week. We have our last 2 draft profiles coming next week. We'll continue to kind of gear up towards free agency and what the Sharks should do with some of their potential moves. So plenty of great stuff. Make sure you're following along wherever you get podcasts. And of course, you can watch on YouTube as well. Follow the show on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram at Locked On Sharks. Follow me on Twitter and Blue Sky at My Fry Hole. Till Monday. Bye, friends.